according to the gentleman I am about to speak with. This man's wife and child were trying to get out for several months. They were left behind. Why? Well, his name is Ali. I'm hiding his identity for his and his family's own protection. Ali, you are an American citizen. Your
Yep.
wife and son are still in Afghanistan. Tell me what's going on.
My wife is completely traumatized. She keeps shaking. She's been through 8 days in the heat. I almost lost my baby to heat stroke, and they had to leave. So this isn't like this. This is days and days in 100-something-degree weather. An innocent 3-month-old baby, and they're stuck, on the ground waiting to get in. The Taliban detains them. It beats them, points guns at them, fires over their heads. She's in bad shape. She's traumatized. She's shaking. She lost 30 pounds in a couple of weeks. So she can barely move, and she has nowhere else to go. And I've almost lost them many times already. For trying to get them out. Just they kept running into Taliban checkpoints. And they kept beating, bashing at their windows, shooting in the air, and turning them around. The Taliban would not let him in. Again, I blame the embassy, Department of State, the Biden administration, Psaki, and all those involved, including the Secretary of State. I blame them for, not having any kind of system to help Americans in Kabul.
Let's get this lay of the land here, because I want our listeners and viewers to really, I'm sure many of them already understand, but let's remind them what's happening here, because there's a very small percentage of the 120,000 people that were airlifted out of Afghanistan, which President Biden says was a huge success, by the way. A very small percentage of them were American citizens, maybe 6,000. Yep. A few thousand more out of that 120,000, a few thousand more were Afghanis who helped in some form or fashion, or were friendly towards the United States, who may have been interpreters, like you just mentioned. You have relatives who were, or who may have been like your dad, who have fought against your father-in-law, who fought against the Taliban. The vast majority that came over seemed to have been picked at random.
Yep.
But your wife, which you described, have been trying to get them out there through the State Department, through the proper channels for months and months. Your wife and your child were trying to get out for a very long time. Yes. They were left behind. Why do you think that is?
I honestly have no clue. That's why I'm turning to the media. Why were my family left behind? Why, I was begging the embassy. We had no clue how anything would turn out. But obviously, way before, my father-in-law was a prime target. So my wife and child were always in danger. So I was begging the embassy. This is a U.S. citizen. He's your most helpless of the U.S. citizens. Like, why are you ignoring him? Basically, I was trying to get the message over. Don't you understand? And I was met with complete apathy by the Kabul embassy, and the Department of State would just wash their hands and say, well, it's up to the Kabul embassy of when to schedule it. So even when they expedited my wife's case eventually, they said, okay, you should hear within, a couple days. I didn't hear for weeks about the expedite. August 14th, they expedited my wife's case. That was the day the embassy closed for her visa. And my son's CRBA, which is his consular report of birth abroad, to get his U.S. birth certificate that he was born abroad, but he's a U.S. citizen, that was scheduled the 18th of August, along with his passport for his U.S. passport. So how is my wife and my child, who's a U.S. citizen, how are they supposed to get their credentials to pass through when you guys ignored it up until the embassy closed? It's been so frustrating that the weakest of Americans, which is a 3-month-old baby that can't even speak for himself, we've done everything we can and still continue to do to try and get them out. And I see so many videos every day of the press conferences of Psaki saying, Biden saying, hey, we've been warning Americans so many times since March. You have not, because my son's an American.
You see Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he's downplaying the plight of those left behind, like your wife and your son, acting as if this is kind of normal protocol, like so many other countries where Americans need some assistance getting home. And, maybe we can help them out like we do in other countries, like if you're stuck in Cancun or something like that. It's as if they're describing a completely different situation that's truly happening on the ground in Afghanistan. What is your specific message? Let's go right to the Secretary of State first, Antony Blinken. What do you want to say to him?
I want to say that, you know, innocent people's lives aren't a public image stunt that you can downplay. You're completely abandoning these people and ignoring them. You're sweeping them under the rug while they're in extreme danger. We've had many pleas. What about, the innocent 3-month-old baby? How do you sleep easy at night?
Hmm. President Biden now, he says there's going to be no more military intervention to rescue U.S. citizens and
Yeah.
friendly Afghanis. He says rather he's going to work through diplomatic channels to negotiate the release, showing some type of respect for this new Afghan government, the Taliban, that's in now oppressive power. There's
Yeah.
a former congressman who's from the Detroit area. His name is Mike Rogers. He's an expert in these overseas foreign affairs issues, and he said right now, in reality, there's not going to be any diplomacy. That's
Yeah.
that's a lie. There's the Taliban. The Taliban is actually valuing American citizens as this high commodity to be
Yeah.
bargained with. And as far as the Afghanis who might have provided any support to the Americans, the Taliban, they simply want them dead. It, would you agree with that assessment? And if so, what do you want Joe Biden, our president, your president, to know?
They've left tens of thousands of special immigrant visa people that have spent so long, just for the chance of being considered to go to the United States. What is that going to show to the rest of the world? You know what I mean? And then what about the citizens? Let's forget about that for a sec. What about an innocent 3-month-old baby?
Yeah.
There's a huge story behind this. Taliban, they shoot guns in the air and those bullets come down and they kill people.
Mhm.
And they're shooting over people and they're pointing guns at people's head. They pointed guns at my wife's head with my child in her arms. And they were shooting above her and she was just covering my child, and they even tried to strike at my child multiple times. At
This
one
this
point,
is the Taliban you're talking about.
yes, yeah, who else? That's them. That's how they are. That's their MO. They're extremely cruel, and this is why nobody likes them. Nobody accepts them. Oh, the Afghan people wholly reject the Taliban. We want our women to be able to be anything, including doctors, soldiers. That's what we want for them. We don't want them to be at home. And they took all that away, all of the progress. They took away our art. They took away our music.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, what 40 years of war the Afghans have gone through. They want these things. They need these things. This is their rights. And I would caution any nations or people that listen to this to keep the maximum pressure on the Taliban at all times. Unfortunately, now that they have, that foothold, keep pressure on them. Do not turn your eyes away. Keep the media presence on them so they don't start killing a lot of people, because that's how they were doing it at the airport. They're shooting, they're pointing. I mean, what kind of people, point loaded guns at an innocent woman's head, small frame woman with a 3-month-old baby in her hands and try and strike at her? The Taliban do.
I listen and I watch the president, your president, my president, Biden, speak about the Taliban, and Jen Psaki doing the same thing, and they refer to them as this new government that we're going to have to cooperate with and work with and negotiate with. Do you feel, as I do, that there is this now suddenly this softening of the perspective of who the Taliban really are, and that's being projected onto Americans, and maybe some Americans are saying, well, maybe the Taliban are different than they were 20 years ago. Maybe it's a different type of people. Maybe they are going to be more inclusive. And that's the message that I feel is trying to be portrayed by this president and the administration. But it's not an accurate representation of who they are. Are you sensing that they're trying to soften the image of the Taliban?
That seems to be the attitude. I think that because there are so many special immigrant visa holders and so many American citizens, firstly, that are left behind. I think that they're trying to downplay the thing that they could easily, be considered hostages. They're basically completely hostages. So that's not a good. It's just image for them. So it's not a good image for the Biden administration to basically, say that, okay, 120,000 people. How could you not get all the Americans out? And what about the special immigrant visas? How, stuff like that. So it's just an image thing. I caution everybody never to trust the Taliban at face. So it,
Practically speaking here, and I do not want you to give details
yeah,
because I care about your plight, and a lot of people do. I would say the majority of the people care about what you're going through, and especially the more we're learning about the reality on the ground there. But as we hear from people like former Congressman Mike Rogers, there are private enterprises, people trying to orchestrate these private rescue missions. He says that he's working with Afghanis to help them through these Taliban checkpoints to get them to the northern part of the country where they can potentially be rescued or airlifted out of there. Are you hearing that type of thing as a potential option, some type of private mission to get your wife and child out of there?
even if those private rescue missions, my uncle is, or my father-in-law is a high value target. So how is he supposed to get to those checkpoints when they're looking for him? Why they have to keep bouncing around, their houses, their hideouts in Kabul. They can't stay in one place for too long because they keep going door to door looking for people. So how are they supposed to be able to safely escort them out? Any kind of rescue operation would be a huge kind of like risk to take
Mm,
them and try to get them through. How are you going to do that? I just want him on a plane out of Kabul anywhere. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, my father-in-law is self-sufficient, so he'll go anywhere and start a business. But my wife and son, I want them with me in the U.S. They're trying to get out. They tried. They did everything until the last second, where they were asking them to go to the Taliban.